Hey everybody, it's Aaron the Pedantic, and today I'm going to talk to you about Warchiefs, Orc Warchiefs to be specific. The reason I'm talking about this is because I recently reinstalled Shadow of War, which I haven't played in forever, and it inspired me. If you're not familiar, it's a Middle Earth game, so Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. Where you play as this dude who is traveling throughout Mordor and fighting these various war chiefs that all are kind of unique in their own ways, and he's trying to climb up the ladder and do all kinds of stuff to screw over Sauron's forces and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that I think is useful. Whenever I look at what I currently have as inspiration for my orcs in D&D, I might be looking at the monster manuals, which if you're looking at the good ones, we'll talk about such information as the command structure of the tribes. Where is the lair at? What kind of defenses do they have? What kinds of other creatures are there? Are they divided into war chiefs and sub chiefs and leaders and all this kind of stuff? How many hit points do they have? All that kind of stuff is in there, but it's still fairly generic, and I understand why it should be, because generally speaking, this is probably as much as you're going to need. You're not going to need a whole lot more than that in a typical campaign. Orcs are probably just something that you run into. It's like, oh, it's orcs. Let's kill them. We're going to get rid of them. We're done. We're moving on. But if you really want orcs to be a centerpiece, perhaps, or just something really important, something maybe right at the right hand of some greater force, like they are in Shadow of War, then perhaps they deserve a little bit more detail. Now, the first thing to think about, because this has changed throughout editions, is what exactly are the orcs? The orcs, are they the pig-faced lawful evil creatures that we're familiar with in the old school AD&D stuff, or are they the kind of newer chaotic World of Warcraft looking dudes that built their society primarily on might makes right and subjugation? If the former, then maybe it's built on order and tradition, and that's going to really change your approach to a lot of this stuff. If you're doing the chaotic stuff, it's going to be pretty much out of fear, is going to be the reason that they're the ones in charge. If it's going to be the ones that are built on order and tradition and things like that, you may have a little bit more respect built into what's going on. So there are a few things that Shadow of War does that I think are really cool. The first one is every one of these war chiefs would have a unique personality. You have to think about, like I said, how they crawled up through their ranks. Some of them are, I mean, the probably most common one that we think of whenever we think of a war chief as an orc is probably like just the big beefy brute, or the champion, this big powerful creature that's just incredibly strong compared to the other ones, and they just rule by pure might. But that's not all it has to be necessarily, depending on, like I said, their alignment, and just there can be more to it. Maybe they're a prolific backstabber and everybody's afraid of making them angry. Maybe they're great plotters and they turn, they're the Cassius, and the Brutus among us that are, they'll just turn everybody against us if we happen to draw their ire. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe they're just insane. Maybe they're just maniacs. Maybe they are powerful shamans that have incredible spiritual pull within their groups. And if that's the case, then you've got some other stuff to build into it. The next thing is names and reputations. Basically, this is something that might be a little bit more difficult to pull off than it is in a video game, where you have a menu and you can just see the names of the big things that you're going to be fighting, even though you do kind of get the information first. So it might be a non-point, but you get the information thrown at you in the video game, but in the tabletop, you're going to have to be a little bit more creative. And the thing that I would say is going to spread their names and reputations is probably going to be their underlings. A lot of times, their underlings should probably have feelings of hate or idolization of their war chiefs. They maybe they just absolutely despise their war chiefs, but they're so terrified of them that when you try to interrogate them, they're like, "I'm not telling you crap because this dude is going to ruin me if I tell you anything." Or it could be that they are true believers or something like that. Maybe they hate them so much that they want to see them perish. And because of that, they're going to be willing to spill their guts and tell you a lot about them. But word of their cruelty should reach the party long before they ever encounter the war chief, just because of how that's going to happen. I mean, a war chief is probably going to be over maybe up to 300 orcs, maybe more than that. Who knows? Um, so some possible information sources, places that they can get this information. In the video game, you have these things called worms, which are just, they're just very particular orcs that have a lot of information, and you can get them to spill the beans on a certain captain or whatever. In this case, I mean, it could be just a roll of the dice whenever you happen to capture somebody. Maybe if you pick a minion, like a lower level, very, very, just a regular ass orc, maybe they've got like a 1 in 6 chance of having information that's really useful. Maybe they've got a 2 in 6 or 3 in 6 chance of something that is maybe it's just a rumor or something like that. And maybe it's corresponding to them. Maybe it's corresponding to something else. You could go a lot of different ways with that, but you could also look at escaped slaves, because orcs should take slaves. No matter how you slice it, they should, unless you are just going to defy what orcs do, which is fine if you want to do that. But if you want to do it right, orcs should take slaves. And because of that, there should be some who have escaped, and maybe they have heard the orcs talk. Maybe they've learned the languages. Maybe they've learned goblin or orc or hobgoblin or just ogre or something. They learned something along the way, and they're going to be able to spill the beans. Maybe if you happen to get another war chief or a captain on the ropes, then they're going to bargain for survival. Look, I'll tell you all about how that one works. Just let me live. Let me live. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. Spies. Now in AD&D, you have the opportunity to hire spies. Usually whenever we think of spies, we think of them spying on other, humans and stuff like that. Demi-humans, kingdoms, all that kind of stuff. You could theoretically have hired spies that are, humanoids, perhaps. Maybe they just really want something, and you can get them to get the information if you give them the stuff. Maybe not. Who knows? It's worth a try. Rangers. Rangers are the ones that are going to be probably the most informative when it comes to just humans and demi-humans out there, primarily humans if we're talking AD&D, that are out there in the wilderness, that will probably have been studying the different tribes and learning more about them and picking them off. They're going to be the ones that you can get just a ton of information from. And it's good to have them out there anyway, because it makes the world feel more rich if you have rangers out there doing their job, and even better if you have them part of factions and all that kind of stuff, really play into the 1E stuff. So those are the places where you're probably going to get your information. When it comes to weaponry, because these are not your average orcs, I'm going to say that if you're looking at like the typical model of magical item distribution in D&D, I'm going to say that they should probably have magical weapons. I'm just going to throw it out there. They should probably have magical weapons. And I'm not just saying they should be like, +1 sword, whatever, we're done, the end. Sure, do that if you want. I would say that would be more of something among sub chiefs or whatever. If we're talking like a war chief, somebody who's in charge of just tons and tons of orcs, they've probably got some resources at their disposal. They could probably get some serious ritualistic blessings and curses and things like that put on these weapons. They may be sentient weapons. These could be something that your player characters probably don't want to pick up after they've killed the thing, because of just the evil taint that's going to be on it. Maybe the enchantments are really, like, a lot of times whenever we look at enchantments, they're poised against certain monster types and things like that. But let's think about this for a second. What if orcs hate elves. So maybe it is just like a +3 damage and to hit against elves. Maybe it's that against humans. Maybe it's against dwarves. You know, they're probably putting their enchantments on there for a different purpose than the people that are putting enchantments to go hunt orcs and things like that. So, there you gotta think evil, you gotta think cruel and unusual and all that kind of stuff. And I would say that maybe you should use alignment swords and stuff like that. If you're not familiar with that, basically the concept is if you touch a sword of opposing alignment, it hurts you. It causes you pain. It could kill you. Maybe it's psychological damage. Just all kinds of stuff that you could go into. So weaponry is important, I think. Assets, do they have shamanistic magic? If so, then what kinds of spells do they have? And what is the source? Is it divine? Is it druidic? You could go a few different ways. Is it just natural magic? Or is this, because of some kind of evil deity that they worship? And if so, then are you just going to do the reverse of your typical cleric spells, or are you going to do something new that's going to represent a particular deity in question? That is something to think about. Do they have elite bodyguards, or are they just kind of beefy orcs? I like the ideas of elite bodyguard squads. Maybe that's something that they're really known for, is just this completely obedient, strict bodyguard group that follows them around, keeps them safe at all times, and you just can't get to them without getting through these freaking bodyguards. And maybe that's something unique to them. Maybe they are always using mounts. Maybe they are accomplished mounted combatants, basically. Maybe that's the thing that they're good at. And so you're never going to find them not on a war horse that they are incredibly, incredibly good at using. Maybe it's a very special war horse. Maybe it's some kind of creature. Maybe they ride around on the shoulders of an ogre at all times. And maybe they use that effectively. It could be a lot of things. Pets, maybe they have all just like a ton of different, maybe they got tons of wolves, like very dire wolves at their disposal, and they are just willing to throw those suckers at you all the time, and they have these things impeccably trained, and that is what they're good at. And that's why people don't really mess with them, is they don't want to be wolf food. Pets could be all kinds of things. It could be giant spiders. It could be, I don't know, whatever. It could be whatever. Just think about it. Well, what makes sense and is cool? There you go. Minions, maybe they just have a ton of different kinds of minions that are really interesting. All right. So that's all like just what you're going to be dealing with them just to kill them. What about their personalities, their quirks? So with Shadow of War, you have things that enrage them, and maybe stuff that enrages them gives them a bonus. So if they are betrayed by somebody, they start getting additional to hit, additional damage, additional rolls on their saves, all kinds of stuff like that. Maybe they have things that they're terrified of. So maybe this could be something like they are terrified of divine magic. Just seeing divine magic used against them is terrifying to them. Maybe it's because of something that they went through. Maybe they have been interrogated deeply by a cleric in the past or something, and they freak out at the sight of that kind of divine magic. Maybe they are terrified of, large mammals, not mammals. If they were doing that, they'd be having a hard time with the human party, wouldn't they? Canines, rather, large canines, or large felines or something. Who knows? Maybe I would say probably to be a little bit more sparing with the fears. But it's still interesting to have that as a possibility. I plan on making a chart for myself that has kind of a small chance of these kinds of intense phobias, just because they did crawl up the ladder. They are fearsome. People are not really able to pull stuff over on them very easily. So I think that's I think that's something to think about. What excites them? So what really gets them going? You know, maybe they're really sadistic. If they're orcs, I'm going to think there's a pretty distinct possibility that they're sadistic. Or if they're not sadistic, then are they incredibly rational? Are they just completely thinking of what is going to put them ahead and keep them in charge, and they're just constantly thinking about just accruing as much power as possible because they want to be the most powerful. They are just that driven. Are they psychopathic? Are they just so out there that you just can't quite predict them, and others are inspired by it, or something like that? Maybe there's just something about that really pulls people in. How intelligent are they? There are decent reasons, I would say, to have a cap on that, just to say orcs don't get this smart. Generally speaking, they just don't get any smarter than an average intelligence. There's maybe some reason to go for that, I would say, but maybe it could really throw somebody for a loop whenever you have an incredibly intelligent orc. Maybe they are an accomplished magic user, and they're just really a spectacle to behold because they know all of these languages. They are incredibly intelligent. How in the hell did this happen? And maybe you have some solid reason. Maybe some poor sod felt like they could rehabilitate this orc and teach them all kinds of really great stuff. And they taught them all kinds of magic and things like that. They taught them languages. And next thing you know, their evil nature just couldn't be overridden. And they just went on a wanton killing spree and landed in the highest ranks of the Warchiefs because of the fact that they are this incredible magic user. That's something that you could think about, or maybe their brains just can never get that big. Who knows? You could do a lot of different things with it. So whenever you're talking about how they can be encountered, what are some things that you can learn about to deal with them? Maybe they have duels with each other that you can jump in on and take advantage of. Maybe they have parties. You can find out, oh, there's going to be this huge party and there's going to be all of these great war chiefs there. And they would probably be isolated because they don't want to have all the underlings around. They're going to be out there. And so maybe a great assassin or a great team could sneak in there and then just take these dudes out, all at once in one fell swoop. Maybe that's something that they could do. Maybe they're going to go out on raids. And so you could find out, oh, they're going to go on this raid on this night of the full moon or whatever. Then you could decide, well, we know what the target is. We can attack them from behind whenever they're trying to attack the others and do a whole pincer attack. We can warn the people that are going to be attacked, and then we can just totally screw them over. Enter mass combat rules. Maybe they are having some kind of ritual, so you could tie that deeper into these kinds of deities and things like that. If they're doing rituals, then what is the thing that they're trying to accomplish? What are the greater goals of these tribes at large that maybe they're trying to work towards that could be interrupted? I mean, chances are you're probably going to have that anyway because they're not just there in a vacuum. Most likely, they could be there in a vacuum if you're just using random encounters, which is fine. But it's something to make things a little bit more rich. What are they really, really trying to do? Okay, so you've encountered them, you've defeated them, theoretically. What next? Well, can they escape and vow revenge? What are the rules that you're using for getting away? All that kind of stuff. Maybe they have a mount. Maybe because of that, they can get away pretty fast as long as people don't, take chase and keep up with them. If they do escape, do they vow revenge? Do they plot to take you down? Do they have this huge vendetta against you? And they spend all their time learning about you and trying to find ways to come after the party after the fact. If they can't get away, are they going to betray their people for survival? Is that the kind of person that they are? Orc. They are. They're not people. They're orcs. Or will they be willing to do that? Or will they just die with their pride? If they do die with their pride, who takes their place? If they survive because you let them go, do they just become your slave? Do you use them as just a constant asset for information? Are they just a captive that you're going to keep in your camp? There's all kinds of stuff that you can do with that. And maybe you can try to convert them to your side and install them as somebody who, if we are dealing with lawful traditional societies, maybe you can get them to start a new society or something like that. There's a lot of stuff you could do. And these are, it's all the stuff you can, this is the stuff that my mind is reeling about after playing this game. Now, there's probably somebody out here who's already touched on all this stuff, who's already played Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor and all that kind of stuff. I'm not denying that. I haven't seen it, but this is the stuff that really stuck with me. And these are the things that I'm going to be doing with orcs in my future campaign. And you could do it with other tribal creatures as well. It's just with orcs, we have certain assumptions that we try to think of. And those are the things about, ruling with fear and might and all those kinds of things that may be slightly different whenever you're dealing with different kinds of tribes. But anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. Don't forget to tip your waitress. Say thank you to the bus driver. And I don't know what else. Have a good one.